Good afternoon, everyone. We are sitting today as the Committee of Adjustment. I am liking to call this meeting to order at 2:02 p.m. Our first order of business is our land acknowledgement statement. The Township of Hamilton is situated within the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabeg and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. Our work on these lands respectively acknowledges their resilience and their long-lasting contributions to the area now known as the Township of Hamilton. Sandra, could I turn to you, please, for the explanation of process for today's hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a Committee of Adjustment meeting, and today we will be hearing one minor variance application and one application for consent to sever. The chairperson will announce each application as it comes forward, and the planning coordinator, myself, will provide a synopsis of the planning report. The entire report is available on the township website should anybody wish to review it. The floor will then be open to the public. Please make yourself known by raising your hand should you wish to speak, and the meeting coordinator is aware of your attendance at the meeting. The order of speaking is as follows: those persons in support of the application, those persons in opposition to the application, those persons seeking clarification, and the applicant will have an opportunity to speak should they desire. Please note, all persons wishing to speak to the application must address their comments and questions to the chairman. And before speaking, you must clearly and slowly state your name and address so that the record is complete. Following public input, members of the committee may make comments or ask questions as they deem necessary. And the committee may make a decision on the application this afternoon. The reasons for their decisions and the impact of public input will be provided by the committee members. Those persons requesting a copy of the notice of decision must do so in writing to myself, Secretary Treasurer, or and you can do that either by sending me an email, or you could drop a letter into our drop box on the left side of the front door of the municipal building in Camborne. Please refer to the file that you are asking about, and I can then forward a copy of the notice of decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The agenda has been circulated. Could I entertain a motion and a seconder, please, for confirmation of the agenda? Moved by Larry, seconded by Mark. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we shall have that recorded. We have two sets of minutes, being September 14th of 2021, as well as October 12th of 2021. I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of those minutes, please. Moved by Larry, seconded by Bill. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising from those minutes? Sandra, is there anything you would like to bring to our attention from those minutes?
Not that I can think of at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. New business, minor variances. We have one application this afternoon. It's application A 24-29 in the Heffernan and Collins name on the Harvard Road. Sandra, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is 3039 Harwood Road, Part Lot 7, Concession 3. The notice of public meeting was circulated on October 19, and the signs were posted on the property on October 26, 2021, in accordance with the Planning Act. The applicant is seeking relief from the following sections of the zoning bylaw to permit the construction of a detached accessory building. Relief from section 525(2) to permit the detached accessory building to be in front of the projected wall of the front of the main building or behind the wall is required. from section 525.3 to permit the detached accessory building to be 89.5% of the size of the principal building, where a maximum of 50% is permitted. And relief from section 93C5 to permit a building height of 23 feet 8 inches, where a maximum of 14.8 feet is permitted. And the applicant's reasons for not complying with the bylaw: storage of a fifth wheel inside the building. It requires a 16-foot high ceiling for proper clearances, storage of a work trailer, and the physical and environmental features of the property dictate the location of the building. The proposed detached accessory building is in keeping with provincial policy statement and with the township official plan. Residential uses and accessory uses there too are permitted in the rural area. The property is zoned rural residential. The use of a single detached dwelling and accessory buildings are permitted. Section 525.2 of the bylaw requires that accessory building cannot be in front of the main building, the projected front wall. It's my opinion that there appears to be sufficient room to locate the building, the proposed building, a little bit further back on the property and maintain the required rear setback of the zone. But the applicant has indicated that the physical and environmental features preclude this. There also appears to be sufficient area to adjust the angle of the house to ensure that the detached accessory building would not be in front of the main wall. These are just minor things to think about for the applicant. The gross floor area of the building is 2,000 square feet, or 89.5% the size of the house. A maximum of 1,117.5 square feet is permitted. The variance of 39.5% seems reasonable in this particular case. And the height of the building would be 17.21 meters versus 4.5 meters, which is permitted. Because of a fifth wheel, it is understood that a taller building is required. The house plans for this property have been submitted to the building department, and the applicants are in the process of obtaining the necessary permits. But at the same time, they want to be sure that they can get the permit for the detached accessory building so that they can move ahead fully when things get started for them. I do note that there is illustration in what was submitted to myself and to the building department to have a 3-piece bathroom and laundry facilities in this detached accessory building. Plumbing is not permitted in a detached accessory building. And the applicant has received a copy of this report and is notified that any approvals that might come forward from the Committee of Adjustment today do not include plumbing facilities. Special permissions from council will be required at a later date. Each variance requested should be considered on its own merit and also in concert with the others requested. And the Planning Act does not define the term minor in nature, but it should include the actual number difference and the impact to the surrounding environment. Agency comments: the building department had no objection, and the Conservation Authority have no objections. They have given various clearances already. So in conclusion, it appears that the proposal is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the governing documents, in the opinion of the planning department, and the committee must satisfy itself that the 4 tests of a variance are met for each item prior to granting the relief. Is relief minor in nature? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? Does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan? And is it desirable for the appropriate development and use of the land? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sandra. Is the applicant with us today?
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback.
Okay, we acknowledge you here, and we will be back to you in a moment.
Absolutely. So sorry about that. I was getting a little bit of feedback. It's Andrea Heffernan from 3039 Harwood Road in Baltimore. Please proceed with any questions you have.
We will be back to you in a moment. We will see if there's anyone in the audience above and beyond you as applicants that are in support of the application.
Where is
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
my?
Tricia, are you here in support of the application?
Yes, I am, Chairman.
Thank you. Please feel free to speak.
Having just built a house on a very rectangular lot, and it was, fairly simple. I understand that the awkwardness of Andrea's lot makes things difficult to place, but I know that she has been in contact with Ganaraska Authority, and they have complied with everything from that department, and they've complied with everything else. And I have no objections to this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience in support of the application? Sandra, I see yours hands up. Would you like to bounce in here for a moment, or is that just from previously?
I do have a question. Could Ms. McDonald please confirm her address?
Oh, I'm sorry, 3059 Harwood Road.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here in opposition to the application? Seeing none, we'll move on to the audience. Is there anyone seeking clarification on the application? Seeing none, we will come back to you as the applicant. You may wish to speak to the application at this time, or you may wish to just answer questions from the committee members.
I can take any questions at this point, Scott.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions?
Sorry about that.
We seem to be having some internet issues, so let me go through the group. Larry, any questions? Mark, any questions? Bill, questions?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I have two things to get clarified, please. First one is the height of the building. I know you'd explained to us before that the height of the building is not actually from ground to peak.
That's correct.
I'm wondering that, or want to ensure that the applicants then have that understanding that the 14 feet 8 inches, I believe it's the midpoint between eve and peak of the house. Is that correct, Sandra?
Yes.
So we're asking for 23 feet 8 inches. That's also halfway between eaves and peak.
I can't, I'll have to defer to Ms. Heffernan.
Because
That
that's going to
23
make
foot
this.
dimension may be to the peak. And
That's what I
if
need to-
committee approves that, then she's within what she needs to be. But then again, if committee approves 23, then she might be even taller than we all anticipate.
Right.
So I would defer that question to Ms. Heffernan as to where
Yeah,
the measurement was actually taken.
Ms. Heffernan, could you answer that question for us, please?
Absolutely. I'll just give a little bit of highlight on that. So it is Andrea Heffernan. I don't know if I need to give you my address yet again, but it is 3039 Harwood Road. So for us to pull our trailer into the shop or garage accessory building, we do need a door of 14 feet. As to clear it, we need 13'6". So for us to actually put a door in of that height, we need clearance for lights, etc., and to be able to fasten that garage door. So that is giving us a wall height of 16 feet. And then because it is a 40 wide to provide that space in and around the work trailer for storage, as well as the fifth wheel, that 40 wide span is giving us a peak height of 23'8".
So it's a peak height.
Correct.
So
Wall height of
And
16 feet and peak height of 13'8".
So could somebody I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Senator, could you tell us then, or is it possible for you to tell us then what the actual height we're being asked for is, what variance from 14.8 is something obviously less than 23 feet, 8 inches?
I will give you a rough estimate.
Sure.
I would believe that the midpoint would be around the 20-foot mark.
Yeah, depending on the steepness of the roof, right? Obviously.
Right.
Okay, but
Yeah,
so the variance is actually a little bit less than what really is
23.8.
being
correct.
asked for, right? Okay, that helps me.
But we can word the decision to say 23.8 to the peak,
Okay,
if
thank
this
you.
is what committee wishes.
Okay, thank you for that. And there's not a question of a side setback, but on my visit, maybe again, Andrea can help me. I saw the 4 stakes. I'm assuming those are the 4 corners. So they're like a wooden stakes.
That is correct.
Okay, and right beside one of them was a metal pin, like a survey stake. Is that something you guys put in there, or is that something from the surveyor?
Was it right beside the pin?
Yes,
Bill?
yes, it was.
So apparently that pin, what I'm being told by my excavator, is the pin where they create the height of the wall. So they would take that pin and they would measure up, and that's going to be basically the height where they can scope to ensure that everything is level. So we are making the house and the shop proud to the road. So that's where they would be getting that height from.
Okay, I'm just concerned that we realize there's a side setback that you have to be, and again, I might need staff to help me. I believe it's 10 feet from the side of the property line.
That is correct.
Okay, so the building is going to be is going to be 10 feet from the property line from your neighbor to the north.
That is correct. So those pins that are, or the stakes that are in there, they allow a 5-foot buffer for around the building, so they can create weeping as well as backfill appropriately to ensure that there's no water damage. As well, just so that you're aware, we're sharing a driveway right now, but we are the first ones into our property versus the Foxes next door. We actually created that driveway more to the south than to the north. So right now, the driveway midpoint is actually at the top of the cusp. So it's a little bit deceiving to the eye. But Ivan B. Wallace has done everything from the pins on the property and placement according to all of the previous surveys, that they even were the ones who surveyed the property when it got severed. So everything should be in accordance to law.
So that driveway is actually going to be twice that width when it's finished.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's going to shift over to the
Yes,
south
to-
when we veer away from the center position of the shared driveway.
Okay, so I saw the pin at the back, or the stake at the back of the property, and I'm just trying to, just eyeing it, looking at it, looked like it was going to be really close to the wall of the building that you're projecting, but apparently
It's very deceiving.
Yes, it is.
Even us as Cody and myself have actually gone through and done this like several times to make sure, because it is very deceiving. And once I called Ivan B. Wallace on it, they explained that 5-foot difference, like making it so that it'll be further south.
Right. Now I'm sure our building department's well versed in what's going on as well. So, but I just needed to clarify that in my mind. Thank you for that. Thanks,
Yeah, no
Scott.
problem.
anything further then, Bill?
No, that's good. Thank you for that.
Pat, questions? Thank you, Pat. I have a couple of questions. Sandra, first to you. Do we have clarity on this building height then, that we can use the numbers produced by the applicant and use in our decision to the peak?
Yes, I believe I'm clear on what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. And to you, the applicants, in your process here, several times you've used the word shop. Shop has different meanings. Lots of times when you get to municipal life, that means commercial. is there any aspect of this building to be commercial in nature?
Hi, Scott. Thank you for the question. As I've explained to Sandra previously, when we were going through this application, I obviously wrote it in the incorrect term. My significant other shop, it's his actual working shop. He is self-employed, is just east of Wesleyville, on Highway 2. So when he works all over Ontario and is on the 401. So when he's coming from the east, the game plan would be just for him to be able to park his 27-foot trailer within the accessory building, I guess would be the better terminology, so that when he goes to work the next day, he can proceed from here instead of having to travel all the way to Wesleyville and back to return to home. He travels all times of the day. So sometimes he could be coming from the east at about 11 o'clock at night, which is not really safe for him to be adding an extra hour onto his travels. So that is the purpose of this accessory building, but I apologize that I had written shop in the application.
Yeah, thank you. I keyed into it today as well when you verbalized it 2 or 3 times. So no commercial activity. And Sandra, that is historically something that we note in our process, is it not?
Yes, I can put that as a condition,
Thank you.
not a problem.
The other component that I find of interest to me is that the reasoning for the positioning of the building on the property is because of natural features. What specifically would those natural features be that would cause the necessity of that section of the minor variance?
Thank you for that question, Scott. So a lot of it has to do with the Ganaraska conservation. We originally wanted to actually place the accessory building on the south side of the property, and we were not allowed to, based on just with the conservation and where that kind of tip of that property falls into the Balls Mill conservation piece. And then at the same time, pushing back, what we were told by both Ivan B. Wallace and a previous designer that was trying to position this accessory building was that it needed to be 50 feet from the back of the property because of the size of the building. So therefore, that's where we left it. I originally, with both designers, had requested it being 25 feet from the back of the property, and both of them proceeded to tell me that that was not following bylaws. So this is where the position was based on both of those surveyors.
Sandra, could you pick up on that, please, and comment on that 50-foot requirement? I'm actually not keying into the necessity of that, Sandra.
I had this discussion with Ms. Heffernan when the application was submitted. I didn't understand why it had to be where it is. It's my opinion, based on the numbers in the zoning bylaw, it could be 3 meters, 10 feet from the rear lot line. That being said, there may be setbacks from the septic system that I don't understand and are not part of the zoning bylaw. So something else, another factor could be weighing in here, but the zoning bylaw does have a 3-meter setback.
Turning back to our applicant, do you know the regulation that's been referenced to you for that 50-foot setback?
My apologies, Scott. I was actually just trying to look up the email that I got from Ivan B. Wallace based on this. One moment, please.
I'll just fill in with a thought that I'm having right now. It would seem as though maybe we could accomplish your original location objective and not necessarily need this section of the variance considered.
Yeah, so he stated that it seems to conform with the existing RR zone of 3 meters interior side yard, and we have a 20-meter rear yard. And that is from Brandon Jones at Ivan B. Wallace.
20 meters is the setback for the principal building.
I think we have a hiccup here, Andrea.
Okay. you know, this is the reason why we didn't contest it with Ivan B. Wallace, was because we had originally wanted to build a Discovery Dream Home. And when they did the site survey and they provided this accessory building on the lot, they put it in the exact same position. So this is where we didn't fight with Ivan B. Wallace about it, because we thought, you know, two people who do this every day would obviously be more correct than our thought process. So this is why we proceeded to where Ivan B. Wallace wanted to put this accessory building. So when this was the case of it being at the front of the house, or in front, or set ahead of the front of the house, we weren't even aware that that was going to be an issue, as the front of the corner of the house was much further ahead than the existing accessory building that we were, or the accessory building that we're trying to create on this land.
It's forgive me, but this is one of those occasions where I think of my past. It seems as though we might be able to accomplish without any variance your original location that you desired, and simplify the process as well. I mean, I guess I must turn to you as the applicant and go, what would your desires be at this point in time? Are you constructing this fall?
The game plan, Scott, would be to basically break ground the moment I have a permit in place, as I have my permits in place for the house at this moment. And the game plan is for us to use all the trades that we're using for the home while they are on the property to build this accessory building at the same time.
Okay, that's not what I was hoping you to say, but anyway, my train of thought is that, and I say it periodically, we need these design teams to be more engaged with our municipal staff to get the rules and regulations that are in requirement stages here, rather than not. And that bothers me on many occasions. However, we do have an application in front of us. We do have an opportunity to move forward with an approval if that is what the committee wishes are. So I'll turn to the committee. Is there any other conversation, Andrea, that you'd like to add at this time, or I'll turn to the committee for their decision?
At this point, the only other thing that I would state is that we are currently living on in our trailer on our property. This was going to be a means for us not to be homeless this winter. I know that doesn't really bring anything into play when it comes to minor variances, but some leniency on this would be greatly appreciated.
Very well. Mark?
Just a comment, or I guess maybe a question to staff. If we do pass the minor variances as presented, there's nothing stopping them from perhaps moving this building back, even though we've passed the variance. They could still go back and revisit this, and if they wish to change the location of the building, as long as it doesn't require another minor variance, they should be fine. Is that not correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I would be more than happy, Mr. Chair, to make a motion to pass these minor variances as presented then.
Mark, might that include a slight modification on the building height as to where it's measured to and from?
Whatever that particular height is, but we do know that it's 23.6 or whatever it is to the peak. So yeah, whatever that height will be, yes.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have a seconder to the motion? Pat, second. Any further discussion? Bill?
Sorry, Scott, just devil's advocate, neighbors to the north, if the building is moved from the position where it was circulated, it will change sight lines. Are we looking at having to I mean, I don't want to recirculate this, obviously. But as long as the building goes, what am I trying to say? As long as the building, even if it's moved, stays where it doesn't require a variance, then we don't have to recirculate this. I'm going to get called, right? Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay, because we don't want to get this called into, an appeal somewhere along the line.
I would look at it if it was relocated to the original option position, it would be an improvement from a circulated property owner to the north.
Okay, thank you.
So any further questions or comments? Okay, it's been moved and seconded for approval with that slight modification on reference to building height. All those in favor of the motion? Carried, but I didn't see Pat's hand. Is it unanimous? Thank you, Pat. Mark, you made the motion, so we're going to come back to you for reasons, please.
Well, we had, the only members in the audience that had any comments were those that were supportive of the application, and also that it meets the 4 tests of a minor variance.
And anything further from the seconder? Thank you. Was that sufficient, Sandra?
Yes, and I believe I can speak for committee when I say that the impact of public input was supportive.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is a consent application. In some aspects, this application has been before the committee before, but it is a modified or an amended application. It's B 10-21 and the Leo Papaleo name in Bewdley. Sandra, when you're available, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do note that I have a typo there. It should be Barry Papaleo, not Leo Papaleo.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies to Mr. Papaleo. This is vacant land on Beach Street in Bewdley, part of Lot 35, Concession 8. The committee did hear a similar application for lot addition previously, but it was discovered that Mr. Papaleo did not own 2 pieces of property in this area. He owns 1. Therefore, lot addition, it would not be appropriate. He is now applying for a new lot creation. The notice of public meeting was circulated on October 17, and the signs were posted on the property on October 27, 2021, in accordance with the Planning Act. The application is seeking to sever 0.27 acres with 131 feet of frontage on Waverly Street for new residential lot creation. The retained lot will have 262 feet of frontage on Beach Street with 0.59 acres of land. The proposal is in keeping with the provincial policy statement in that the majority of development and residential development should be in settlement areas. And also with the official plan, the property is within the Bewdley Rural Settlement Area, Oak Ridges Marine designation of the official plan. And the official plan and the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan do permit minor infill and rounding out for new lot creation in settlement area designations. There is a landform conservation area category 1 on the retained parcel and category 2 on the severed parcel. And there is an area of high aquifer vulnerability on the entire parcel. Development of the parcels will need to adhere to Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan regulations, which limits the portion of the property to be developed as being undisturbed or with impervious surfaces, and prohibits highly toxic chemicals on site. These chemicals are not normally found in a residential setting. Township needs to enter into a site plan agreement or other agreement with the applicant to establish conditions requiring that natural self-sustaining vegetation be maintained or restored in the long term. With respect to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned urban residential first density. This requires 1 acre of land and 150 feet of road frontage on a municipally maintained year-round road. The property enjoys an existing non-complying status with respect to frontage, 131 feet on Waverly Street, and with respect to lot area, 0.86 acres. However, the rest of the development in this area is also undersized, and I've provided a small illustration of the lands on the south side of Beach and the north side of Waverly, and a couple on the south side of Waverly. Most of the land in this area is woefully undersized, nowhere near 1 acre. So the proposal before committee is not in compliance with the zoning bylaw. There's no question there, but it is in keeping with the development of the neighborhood. And this is a long established historic neighborhood. The illustration is on page 52 or 56 of the agenda. Thank you. That's wonderful. So there are some others that are a wee bit bigger than the 1/4 acre being proposed. I don't think anything's any bigger than the 0.6 acres being retained. So the proposal is in keeping with the historic development of this neighborhood. But a zoning amendment will be required to recognize and permit the dimensions of the subject properties once as condition of provisional consent. The applicant did contact the Conservation Authority through the previous exercises, and it was proved that there's sufficient room on both lots for a house of significant size with a septic system and 2 off-street parking spaces. These are general illustrations. They are not the illustrations of how the property must be developed. It just shows that it is possible to do what needs to be done without any other variances for setbacks or lot coverage or anything like that. It's the opinion of this department that the proposal can be brought into compliance with the zoning bylaw. The Conservation Authority provided comments that the property is not within the floodplain, watercourse, or shorelines, wetlands, or valley slopes. It's not subject to Ontario Regulation 168.06. It is in the Oak Ridges Moraine, but outside the conservation's regulated areas, and they would have no objection to this consent, and permit would not be required. The County of Northumberland, the subject lands are located within the settlement area. Provincial and county policies support the creation of new lots, and the county inspection services had no concerns regarding sanitary servicing of the proposed lots. Building department had no objection. In conclusion, it's recommended that the proposal does receive provisional consent, and should committee wish to do that, it's recommended the following conditions be imposed. The applicant shall submit reference plan as noted. The applicant shall enter into a development agreement with the township addressing the long-term protection of any key natural heritage features. This will be registered on title, and a copy of the registered document will be returned to me as evidence of the registration. Applicant shall pursue a zoning amendment with respect to the size of each property. Provide proof of payment of the park levy, $1,500. Provide proof of payment of taxes in full, and provide 3 hard copies of the new deed within 2 years of the giving of written notice of decision. And the deed shall be suitable for stamping, including that all the above noted conditions have been fulfilled. In addition, Mr. Chairman, I have received an email letter that I believe I should read at this point. This is from Sandra Thomas of 7050 Waverly Street. I'm very much against the joining of these 2 lots. However, I should know by now that I'm just wasting my time. You see, I'm a longtime resident of this village, as far back as I can trace my ancestors, not from Toronto or other places, just here to clean up and pay for messes they leave. My well was contaminated by health department giving out a permit to a resident next to me, even though proper distance was not followed. Cost me over $1,000 to clean my well, not them. I must say, if they do so now, they will be paying. This is the same lot as it was when no permits were allowed. What happened? My opinion, It's just plain greed. Barry never followed Hamilton Township rules. In fact, he went against them, tearing down stop work orders and going back to work on an old shack. Yet he is the one being rewarded. My neighbor Glenn Gould and myself paid to have his rotten old poplar trees that were plugging up our septic tanks and roofs of our houses, not to mention the worry of them coming down in a windstorm, like one branch did, damaging a neighbor's shed roof, and thankfully not his house. We had them removed, cleaning up and removing at our expense. Our mayor opened up parks and fishing ramps during lockdown for Toronto people that had moved here and wanted their friends to visit. Left us that we could not get parked to even go in for our mail. Do they not care for us that we have lived here and paid taxes for years? They even let Toronto people hook up to a community well that was paid for by 3 old seniors that is supposed to have access available to anyone who wants it. They even filled swimming pools while long-term residents paid to have water brought in. And now they know nothing about that or care to find out. Probably they sold a lot and a house built on it. Once we had at least 4 grocery stores, a garage, and 4 places to buy gas. Now we have a garage that sells no gas, 1 grocery store, and plenty of drinking holes. Not to say land is donated for a school turned into an arena while our children are bussed all over. Bewdley is now known as Little Toronto or worse. What is wrong here? Is it just plain greed? Or mayor and council members not from here carrying that along with money they are bringing crime in too? They didn't even follow COVID rules, staying home and wearing masks. We now have 3 members of one family in Hamilton Township fighting for their lives because of it and another lockdown. That's what I have for today's presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sandra. I see our applicant is here. There may be there will be an opportunity in a moment, Mr. Papaleo, to speak. We will acknowledge you in a few moments. I will turn to the audience. Is there anyone else other than the applicant here in support of the application? Seeing none, I will move on. Is there anyone here in the audience in opposition to the application that would like to speak? Seeing none, I shall move on. Is there anyone in the audience seeking clarification on the application? Seeing none, I'll come back to you, Mr. Papaleo. This would be your opportunity to speak, or if you wish to just answer questions that the committee members might have, this would be your opportunity.
Yes, Barry Papaleo, 7041 Waverly Street, Bewdley. I'd just like to make a couple of clarifications on a couple of comments that were made by my neighbor. One was that I ignored a stop work order on a cottage that was on the property at one time. At that time, I wasn't involved in the cottage with the cottage. It was my grandmother's cottage. And I wasn't involved when my uncle attempted to do some work on the property. I was involved, however, when we received a notification from the township that they wanted the cottage demolished. At that point, I asked for an extension from Scott Gibb, who was a building inspector at that time, received an extension of 1 month. And after that period, or during that period, we had the building removed. The other thing that the neighbor mentioned was that they had to remove, or they had to deal with the damage done by a couple of poplar trees and remove the poplar trees themselves. I've been in Bewley, and I'm from Scarborough. I've been in Bewley for 20 years. I've owned property in Bewley for over 40 years. My family's been in Bewley, owners of property in Bewley since 1933. So we're not new to the neighborhood. As far as the poplar tree is concerned, I'm familiar with the lots, and I've been familiar with them for years. And I don't recall ever that a poplar tree had come down on those lots. That's all I have to say about that. And if there's any questions the committee would like to ask, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Papaleo. I'll turn to committee members here again because of internet issues. Pat, any questions or comments? Thank you. Bill, questions or comments?
Just a clarification, I'm pretty sure Sanders already covered this, but I'm always that well and septic worrywart. But Sandra, you did say that county believes that that septic and well will fit into this lot configuration.
Yes, that's correct. There's an illustration on page 53 of 56. Again, it's just an illustration of the possibility. It is certainly not the proposal that staff will be looking at for development, but it does show a well, septic system, 2 off-street parking places, and decent sized houses, 1,076 square feet and over 3,000 square feet. So that there's room on both lots for development without variance to setbacks or lot coverage.
Thank you.
Anything further then, Bill? Mark, any questions or comments?
No, I'm glad Bill asked that question again, and I'm glad Sandra clarified that with the diagrams and so forth. The lots don't seem the one lot doesn't seem very big, but it is, that could accommodate a couple that, with housing market the way it is and so forth, that hopefully somebody can build a smaller home and be able to afford it there.
Thank you, Mark. Larry, questions or comments? Thank you. Sandra, I have a question. Am I correct in thinking that the lot size that exists today is even substandard in relationship to the square footage of a lot that we would be establishing in another situation?
That's correct. Normally, the bylaw requires 1 acre of land. My calculations put the property at 0.86 acres.
So the existing lot as a whole is less than the minimum that we normally would be asking for.
Correct.
Thank you. Sandra, again to you. When we establish, in this case, a minimum area in the zoning bylaw, what is the purpose of doing so?
It's my understanding that a minimum 1 acre is to ensure that there's enough room for a house, enough room for a well and septic system, so that these are not contaminated by each other or by neighboring systems, or would contaminate a neighboring system. It's for the safety of the environment as a whole. One of the more important reasons, I'm sure there are a number of other reasons that those who wrote the bylaw had in mind, and Council of the Day had in mind when the bylaw was passed. But I believe the safety of water would be paramount to everyone.
Thank you. Sandra, just one further question. Do we truly have the knowledge that a review by the county staff has been completed to look at soil types, to look at nitrate loadings at the property lines, which is really contamination from other properties to this one, or from this property to others?
Okay.
Has there been a review done, or is it just a desktop review from what's been circulated to them?
I'm double checking some emails, if you will just bear with me. I have a detailed report from Mr. Kirk Johnstone dated July of 21.
And the critical part of that is to review adjacent properties in relationship to well locations and those types of things, of course, at this point in time.
And we don't usually read these reports from Mr. Johnston. So I'm not really sure exactly what I'm looking for. It wasn't, I don't believe it was just a desktop review, because it is what they title as a detailed report.
Do you get the feeling from your quick review that that detailed report has been such that adjoining servicing with by means of private well and septic have been factored in?
I do believe so.
Is there an indicator in your correspondence?
It was the cover email say, merger service. Class 4 systems are much smaller than in the past. Building code requires class 4 system to be installed. Typically, designers utilize conventional trench bed or filter bed systems. However, on smaller lots, they may need to design a tertiary system, which is engineered and manufactured to treat sewage to a higher standard prior to entering the environment. The owner was informed that wells, which we do not govern, may be an issue when designing a system, as a dug well must be 30 feet from a sewage system piping, and if it is a drilled well, 15 meters. Tanks must also be 15 meters from either well type.
Sandra, could you just check that number? You said 30 feet. I think you probably wanted to say 30 meters.
Yes, it must be 30 meters from a dug well, 30 meters, and a drilled well, 15 meters. Yes.
And on the sketch that's coming forward for this application, do we have any indicators of types of wells on adjoining properties?
I do not have that.
Obviously, with the nature of my question, I have a real concern with well and septic, even though maybe a few moments ago, some of us felt more comfortable with it. I don't on this small a lot, especially on the 0.27 acres by your calculations, Sandra. The half an acre lot is something I'm familiar with and dealt with in the past, and know that we have any number of those. But I really do have concern with that 0.27 acres. And at this point in time, nothing in that report that you've just quickly reviewed makes me feel any differently on that. I guess I should turn to Mr. Papaleo. Mr. Papaleo, has anyone done any design work for septic systems on that smaller proposed lot of the 2.7 acres?
No one's done any specific work on it, although I have made a number of inquiries into what size septic system would be needed. And it was extremely difficult to get anyone to give me an exact size of the septic system that would be required, unless I could provide them with information as to the size of the house, the number of washrooms in the house, the number of bedrooms, etc. What I did do is I talked to Mr. I just get his name here. Mr. Jeff Burton at Earthworks Excavation, who was at the time installing a septic system at the Habitat House or Habitat for Humanity House on Beach Street. And he informed me that what he was putting in there was a 16-foot by 16-foot septic system, the filter bed septic system. After that, I got in touch with Doyle Plumbing and had them send their estimator out to check the property over. And again, I was given the same information that they couldn't give me an exact size for the septic system without knowing the plans of the house. Although he did go on to say that the septic systems they're currently putting in the work that they are doing is usually normally and on the average of 24 feet by 24 feet. And those are filter beds. Other than that, I don't know whether any other information I can give you. If you look at my sketch that I sent, I've included septic systems based on 24 by 24 foot septic systems. That would be a filter bed. Although I've outlined the setbacks for the septic systems and the amount of extra area that is there to be able to move one of these filter beds. So you can see there's quite a bit of extra room there. Because it's a filter bed to move around to ensure that is the proper distance from any wells. On the Waverly Street lot,
Go ahead, Barry. I thought you were finished. Sorry.
sorry. Yeah, just point out that on the Waverly Street lot, I put in a well there, and if I'm correct, it was 30 meters from the septic system.
Yes, and that's what Sandra read just a few moments ago, was 30 meters. Pat, I believe you had a question just a moment ago.
Yeah, I think I had a question, and then what Mr. Papaleo said just confused me. We were talking about the ability for septic and well on the Waverly side, correct?
I was looking at the 0.27 acre lot.
Yeah, the small
Mike
one,
mentioned.
okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Pap, if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like directly to Mr. Papaleo. Is the well that's marked on the drawing on that one, it is not currently there, right? That's a proposed well?
That's a proposed, it's not a proposed well, it's just a sketch indicating where the well is as far as the setbacks and everything else.
But the well isn't currently in place.
No, no.
Okay, Sandra, what's the setback for wells from property lines?
I'm not aware of anything under the zoning bylaw.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to figure some stuff out in my head, but you said that if he goes with the drilled well, it has to be a minimum of 15 meters from the septic?
Yes.
Okay. So I was trying to do some of the math in my head, and it seems to me that if with a drilled well, even with all the things that we talked about, there is probably space once you start taking his measurements for the parking and such, if the smaller number can be used. Thank you.
Pat, if I might interject, of course, one always needs to have regard for well and septic on adjoining properties as well, because of those limiting distances.
So
I mean-
where does that leave us though, in terms of approving or not approving this consent? Because none of this gives us information of neighbors, and I don't feel like we typically get that.
Well, because of the size of the lot, I believe our level of comfort is diminished somewhat in knowing whether that this project or this approval of a consent as requested might create a piece of property that could not be built on. And I say, I'm not assuring anyone of that. I'm just saying that maybe our level of comfort in that aspect is reduced in this case.
So just so I have clarity, if I may, I see Bill's hands up too. So I guess where I'm at is I understand what you're saying, like the logic of what you're saying. If the consent went ahead, then it's not until the time that Mr. Papaleo goes to put in a well or to put in a septic system that he actually hears this is a no-go. Am I right?
That is one avenue that could occur, yes.
So much as I truly hate the word, is this one of the times where we should actually suggest to the property owner that he may want a deferral? Because that's information that is kind of important for him to have. We've been looking at everything in isolation, not considering how close the neighbors are. So I'm like I said, I'm just typical to what we normally would do. This is different because of the size of the lot. And my brain kind of thinks that that might be the only option that makes sense to him, because it's not useful for him to have a useless severance.
One of the options that the Committee of Adjustment have is certainly a deferral. In your suggestion, it would appear that that would provide Mr. Papaleo an opportunity to feel comfortable that he had a usable lot at the end. And at the same time, he may wish to do that based on the fact of the costs of proceeding and not knowing the end result at the in the future. He may exercise that right and request that of us. Bill, does that help in any way, Pat? Okay, Bill, you had a question?
Yeah, well, more of a thought than a question. I mean, Mr. Papaleo keeps referring to the size of the septic system is going to be dependent on the size of the house. But if there is a consent made here today, that might actually be the reverse situation. The size of the house might be limited based on the fact that, you know, there is such a small space in this, basically it's a 1/4 acre lot. But us creating the consent doesn't give the property owner any permission to go ahead with a building of any size of a house or any outbuilding or any septic system. It simply creates a consent to go forward. But I would imagine that he's going to find out that he's going to be limited in the size of the house he can build, and the number of bedrooms that it can have, and the number of particularly bathrooms that it can have based on the size of the lot. So I believe, getting back sort of what Mark was looking at, it might be the opportunity for somebody to build a smaller home. But that may not be what Mr. Papaleo is thinking about doing, but he has to be prepared for what Pat's saying. He might not get a consent to go forward, or he might get approval to build a smaller home that would be suitable to the lot size.
Sandra, our minimum residential house size is going to be probably 980 or 1,000 square feet.
Under 1,000, correct?
Okay, thank you. That's minimum with zoning provisions that's currently in place.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Papaleo, you've heard some of the thoughts and the comments and the questions of the committee. Would you like to add anything prior to me going to the members for a motion?
The only thing I can think of is I've put this sketch together, providing you with all the setbacks and the locations of, or possible locations of the septic system and wells. And what I seem to be hearing is that you're saying that if the neighbor's well or septic system doesn't conform to the setbacks, then I'm the one that's going to be punished because of it.
I would
If
change
their
the
septic
flavor.
system is too close to the.
I would change the flavor of that ever so slightly, Mr. Papaleo. Your well and septic, regardless of their location, has to meet a certain setback distance from their location. So they are in compliance today because they have existing systems. You're the one that's coming along with a new proposal for a new septic and a new well on 2 different properties. And because of the size of the one being very small in nature, then you may not have sufficient space on that smaller lot to get both well, septic, and house to meet your clearance distance from your own servicing, as well as your clearance distance requirements from those servicing items on other people's lots.
Okay. Uh, I guess my question is, the lot received the approval of the county plumbing department, and I would assume that they would take all that information into consideration before they gave the approval.
I'm assuming that they didn't, from what I've had read to me. And I'm assuming, knowing the area, that they didn't. And I'm assuming, knowing the exact words within that report, that they didn't. However, I wish you were right with that thought.
Committee Williamson has a question.
Larry, please.
Just a comment, Mr. Papaleo, are you actually going to be building the homes on these two properties?
No, personally, no, I won't be building homes on these.
So you're selling these properties?
I'll be selling these properties eventually, yes.
Well, it seems to me that the one property is the largest piece of property on that whole street, on that whole area. And the other one is equal to or same as many of the other properties.
That's
So it
correct.
seems to me that Mr. Papaleo's problem isn't to where the septic beds are. It's more to whether he can get a consent to sever. And then the persons that are going to be buying this property will then have the problem of what kind of septic system and water will be put on these properties along with house. Is that correct? So our real situation here is not about what's going to be built. It's whether we can sever these or consent to sever these properties for Mr. Papaleo so that he can sell them. But I don't see these to be unique or different than any of the other properties along that whole area. I may be throwing a wrench at it, but it seems to me we're talking about building specifications where Mr. Papaleo is not really interested in that, is he? So those are my only comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Understood, Larry. Thank you. Sandra, our policies for lot development, do they have any verbiage dealing with lots of substance suitable to sustain a water source and a septic system?
Yes, the official plan. Bear with me, please. The frontage, size, and shape of any lot created shall be appropriate for the proposed use and conform to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. It is a very generalized statement. Basically, we can't create a lot that isn't developable. This is to Member Williamson's point, that it needs to be developable, but are we as the committee going beyond our realm and saying, make sure you can fit everything on here? Or are we being proactive in determining that it's actually going to be developable in the long run? Member Kane did basically say the size of the septic system will dictate the size of the house, which is the cart before the horse in most instances. But in most instances, we put our foot down at the 1 acre mark because that's what the zoning bylaw says. Yes, this lot would be in keeping with the neighborhood. Does that make it right? That's not for me to say.
It'd be nice if the lot were in keeping with the neighborhood and we felt comfortable that there is sufficient size and area to accommodate all the requirements of 2 new wells and 2 new septics. Larry, I believe you had another question or comment.
Well, I understand the 1 acre aspect of the zoning, but I don't even see a 1 acre lot along that road on either side of Waverly or Beach Street. I could be wrong, but the numbers I'm showing here don't show 1 acre lot anywhere. So in hindsight, are we not being fair to Mr. Papaleo in being able to sever these two properties and sell them? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions or comments, Pat?
I'm going to use a word I very rarely use, and I don't know if Sandra knows the answer to this question or if someone else may jump in and know the answer. The size of the lots that Mr. Papaleo are requesting completely are within reason for the neighborhood. I don't have a problem with that. But the houses that were there previously were following the rules and regulations of that time. The measurements, etc., have changed over the years, and this current lot size, the small one I'm referring to right now, is compatible with the neighborhood. But once you start taking into the other things into consideration, which aren't Mr. Papaleo's problem if he's selling the lot as a lot, but could turn into our problem, and this is a word I don't use in this context very often, if we are required to only produce lots that are buildable, then if he sells this lot and it is not buildable, does the liability come back on us? And I don't know if there's anyone who actually knows the answer to that question right now, but that's where my concern comes in.
Liability, I can't speak to. I would project that if it's not developable, then whoever does own the property is going to snub their nose and say, well, it's not developable, I'm not paying taxes. So then it comes vested back into the township, and then we have to deal with it that way. That takes a long time, mind you, but it is a possibility.
Well, we've had good and open discussion here. I believe it's time to make a decision. I turn to my committee members and ask for a motion, please. I
Would you
don't see
like,
anybody coming off mute at this moment. Larry?
would you
are
like me
first?
to add
I
another
would-
condition in this? In that
I would,
he must prove that both lots are absolutely developable, even with a 1,000 square foot house.
I was going
Sorry,
to
Larry,
recommend,
just a second. Sandra's bounced in here with a valid point, I think. So sorry, Larry. Sandra, you're suggesting an additional condition of the consent itself
Yes,
to.
that both lots must be proved to be developable.
Okay, in respect to all issues or in respect to the septic and well?
Committee's decision. How do I write this?
Okay, if we went to well and septic, then what would be the nature of that consent? Would it be the installation of, and I hope the answer thought to that's no. Would it be a design by a professional showing that those options were there available? What is your train of thought, Sandra?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to suggest you are more of an expert on wells and septics than I am. Most people would be. So perhaps the design is sufficient. Is what Mr. Papaleo has already submitted indicative of what is actually going to be available out there? Or is this a wish list diagram of yeah, I can meet the bylaw? I can write this condition under the direction of the committee to reflect A, B, C, and the whole alphabet if you wish. Or we could leave things as is and committee can make a decision on what is before them. It's up to committee. I'm just putting forth the option that the conditions can be amended at this point because nothing's been decided.
Thank you, Sandra. Larry, we'll come back to you. We interrupted you, sorry. Larry, you're back on mute.
I was going to suggest that maybe we defer until we can determine whether, as Pat indicated, if we were to sever these properties, would there be a liability? considering the current size limitations that are there. And, until we can determine that these properties are buildable, that the Committee of Adjustment is not putting itself and the township in a position of liability. So thereby, clear up the whole issue of water and septic in regards to the size of a house. That's my only comment now.
Thanks, Larry. Pat, please.
I was gonna say, I would be comfortable with an appropriate design, I'm assuming by some sort of engineer, that shows that there is room for a building envelope and still meeting well and septic requirements.
Mark?
I would agree with Pat, and if Pat wishes to put that as a motion on the floor, I would second that to get this going.
Done.
Okay, I'll second that then.
Okay, we just need Sandra to make sure she's got the exact wording here before we go further.
You want it deferred,
No,
Condition.
added the condition of an engineer design for well and septic.
Showing that there's still an adequate building envelope.
For both lots, severed and retained.
Yes.
and might I add to the chairman's comments that, that all neighboring properties are taken into an account when that design is done. So there's a well, for instance, there's a well close to the property line that, the septic system is not going to interfere with that and so forth.
Sandra, please, go ahead.
8 weeks ago, the proposal before the committee was for a lot addition. We were of the understanding that there was a lot that was 0.13 acres instead of 0.27 acres as the proposal is. And that 0.13 was about to be doubled, proposal before committee. Assuming that had been true, that 0.13 acre was an existing lot of record and could have been built on tomorrow because the well and septic system would have been made to fit. We are now dealing with what we know to be the truth, proposing a lot double the size of what we thought it was in the first place, and debating on whether or not a well and septic system can be put in. There are a number of lots in existence in the township, 0.27 acres and less, that have existing status, that can be built on, that have been built on. We're discussing the Benai application in another section of the township at different meetings granted. That again is a very small lot. I don't recall the exact dimensions, but it's only 60 foot wide. I just want to remind committee that 8 weeks ago, we believed that Mr. Papaleo had a lot of 0.13 acres and was able to build on it. And he said, I want to make it bigger. Can you help me? I just wanted to put that out there.
Sandra, your point exactly. We were dealing with a different application at a different time with a different provision, existing versus not. Today, we're dealing with the facts as we now know them, of dealing with one lot that in its entirety is under the size requirements of what we require. When we are generating a lot of approximately 25% of our minimum size, and I emphasize the word creating a lot, we must have regard for different items than we were dealing with before. Are we in a position to make a motion on this or follow through on the motion rather, Bill?
Yeah, I need a couple comments. First of all, it is very clear that the site plan that Mr. Papaleo has put forward has not taken into consideration any of the neighboring septics or wells. That's abundantly obvious. And the second point we have to consider is if we create this lot and it goes up for sale, somebody pays a lot of money for a piece of property right now. Prices, we're talking in the hundreds of thousands, and goes into that with their eyes closed and suddenly realizes they can't build their home that they want to build on there. I think we're in a big, we're opening up ourselves for a lot of problems. So I'm agreeing with what Pat and Mark are presenting. I think we need to proceed with a great amount of caution and make sure that we get this right.
Thank you, Bill. Pat?
Just a small comment, also sort of in reference to what Sandra just said. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the existing lot of 0.13, Mr. Papaleo was not asking for originally an addition, but regardless an addition or the newly created severance, he could choose to build on the 0.13 and try and make everything fit. And then if he was able to do that, he could then later ask for the lot addition, correct? Or it's all one now? It's all one, so he couldn't even do that. So there's no way he can build on it as it is, unless he only builds one unit.
Pat, I think we should set aside our previous thoughts, our previous application. The information we had before us is one lot.
Yeah, that's what I was getting clear in my head. So at this minute, he could build one house wherever he chose on the total irregular lot.
Provided that he had the setback provisions and approvals required for septic, well, lot coverage, parking, and all of those other issues. You are correct.
Okay, then the only thing I would add is that we don't typically ask about where neighbors' things are. So I can understand where for Mr. Papaleo, this might feel like it's coming a little bit out of left field. And it truly is about the size of the lots that's being created. It's not about like I feel like this has been going on a long time, but the new information does have a big impact on how we consider it.
Absolutely.
We have a motion on the floor. Can we move on with the motion?
Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved and been seconded with a additional condition to be added. We've all heard that verbalized. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Sandra, do you need comments? Reasonings?
Yes, please. Reasons?
I would start,
Pat, please go ahead.
okay, I would start with I want to get the wording right. The property severance would create lots consistent with the remainder of the residential area. However, the extra condition is necessary to make sure that we're creating a viable lot.
Thank you, Pat. Anything further to add, Mark?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we all know this is a small lot, and we all know that we have to take, all the precautions that we can to make sure it is developable. And I'm glad, Mr. Chair, that you brought forward about, I'll be honest, I never even thought of the neighbors and how small their lots are, and as Bill's mentioned too, that, where their wells and where their septic could be. So I mean, we are taking those into account now. So I think that, we've done all we can do to make this happen and hope it works out.
Thank you. Are you okay, Sandra?
And impact of public input, please.
I'll comment on that. I mean, we did have a letter of opposition, and it was dealing with environmental issues, and that our additional condition has addressed that.
Thank you.
or will address that.
Yeah.
Anything further, Sandra?
I have, not for this application.
Mr.
I
Papaleo?
did-
I would like to speak to Mr. Papaleo. Are you still there, Barry?
I'm still here.
Obviously, you have received conditional approval. Obviously, there is a great deal of importance, and I'm sure you understand that in relationship to that smaller lot, in relationship to wells and septics. You've heard all of the discussion. You understand the committee's position. It has now become a condition of your consent. That your condition of consent is required to be completed prior to the stamping of the deed. You will receive a notice of decision from our township staff outlining those conditions. If you have any questions or comments about those, feel free to contact staff once you've received them.
I understand.
Thank you. Sandra, anything further than on our agenda as far as other business is concerned?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I didn't get this on the agenda, but I did send an email to committee members through OCA, the Ontario Association of Committees of Adjustment and Consent Granting Authorities. I'm a member, as you are aware, and there is a training session coming up online. As a member, my attendance at these training sessions is free. I'm happy to have one person sit in my office with me and review this training session online, or if you want to come, I'll work with senior staff and make sure that we can set something up in committee room B so that we can be appropriately separated. I've sent the information to you through email as to what these training sessions are about. They are the next 4 Mondays. The one session I don't think really applies to what we've had to encounter here in the township, so I haven't signed up for that one, but I can, should you desire to view it. So if you wish to join me, I'd be happy to make appropriate arrangements and we can sit in on these virtual sessions.
Thank you, Sandra, although I missed a part of what you just said in relationship to the past. I did receive an email notice from you about the sessions, but I've not keyed into the nature of the sessions. Maybe my bad. Could you send that to us again, or send it to me at least again?
Sure, Ken.
To all of us, please. I haven't seen it either, what's on the agendas.
Okay, not a problem.
Thank you, Sandra. The next order of business is adjournment. Moved by Pat, seconded by Mark. All those in favor, yes. Thank you, one and all. And thank you to staff.
Thank you.
Aye for
This
the,
was a short session. We only had 2 applications.
yeah.
Thank you very much.